Hello and welcome to this recording of the Partners 2020 Ask the Experts industry webinar for Biomedical Sciences. This session was hosted by our careers consultant Kate Rothery, and she was joined by Biomedical Sciences graduates Siobhan Lister, who's currently working as a medical writer, Louise Alder, who after completing a Biomedical Sciences degree and following that up with a Master's and a PhD, is now working as a change manager in the IT industry, and finally Simon Hawkins, who after again studying biomedical sciences went on to study medicine and is now working as a doctor specialising in anaesthetics. At the start of this session, each of our guests will be providing talks to tell you a little bit more about themselves, their times at university and their careers to date, before Kate leads them in a Q&A with questions that have been submitted by you, the partner students, and from those who were able to tune in live. Without any further ado, we're going to hand over to Louise to tell you a little bit more about herself and her career.
Hi everybody, welcome to the session. So my name is Louise Alder. I was at Newcastle University between 1993 and 1996, and I did a PhD in clinical immunology. So biomedical science. I was based in the medical school. So just a little bit about sort of my journey. I started off at school being lucky enough to think what I wanted to do was go into medical research. So I had a reasonably clear sort of path from there. So I did A-level maths, biology and chemistry. I did a bit of research and found out that biochemistry was probably one of the better degrees to do if that was the sort of thing you wanted to go into. Went to Sheffield University, had an absolutely brilliant time there, both academically and socially. Brilliant, loved my subject. Still quite keen. I did have a bit of a minor moment where I thought I might want to become a brewer, and did a little bit of looking at that, but still stuck with the medical research and looked around at PhDs and was very interested in AIDS research, which was something at the time that was very, very popular. And Newcastle were offering a really good PhD in that. So off I went to get my interview and really loved Newcastle and ended up there. I don't know if you can tell by my accent, but I'm originally from Sussex. So my mum was a little bit upset that I was going 350 miles away from her, but they lived the northeast as well. So I ended up there, had a fantastic time. But I think what I discovered, which was very upsetting, was that it kind of wasn't the career for me. Whilst I loved the subject, I found that you had to be very, very focused if you wanted to go into a career in medical research, and quite isolated, a little bit insular, and it just didn't feel like it was for me, whilst I loved the topic area. So I started looking around at what else was out there that I could do, and at the time, as I think I mentioned earlier, IT was really getting going, and internet was just starting up, and I found a real bug. So I actually ended up deciding to go and work in the IT industry, which was pretty tough in terms of trying to persuade IT companies at the time, because I don't think people were so into this idea of transferable skills. So it took me about 18 months to find a company that was prepared to take a bit of a chance on me. And ended up going into sales, IT sales, rather randomly. But I've actually stuck with it, and I now work in sort of do project management work in IT, and I've worked on lots of different things over the years. So that's sort of my journey. I know this call's really about the sort of biomedical science stream. So absolutely happy to help with any questions anyone's got about getting into that, and also a bit more about how to be flexible with your career. I think there were just three things that, I wanted to share about how has my degree helped me, because I guess on paper I run my own business. My degree might not seem that relevant, but I think what it really taught me is that you should follow your passion, because I still love that subject area, and I really loved and enjoyed the subject. And university can be tough, so I think you've got to really enjoy the subject that you're studying. It has taught me about transferable skills, and I mean, really never discount anything that you've ever done, because I mean, I used to do a cleaning job when I was at Newcastle, And I even find myself going back to that sometimes, and the experiences I had from that in terms of, you know, running my own business and thinking about how I manage my time and that sort of thing. So there's never anything that you've done that's wasted. It can all pop up again at some point. And I think the third thing, which I found really helpful in the end when I made the transition, was to be yourself, but, you know, be proud of you and what you offer and what you give. You know, your experience will be very different from somebody else's always. I know when I moved into management consultancy business, I felt quite a pressure to conform to a way of being, and I found that difficult. So I actually sort of thought back a bit to my time when I was at Newcastle, and about how, you know, I used to feel very comfortable in my skin there, and you know, started to just become myself a little bit more, and suddenly I found things took off for me again. So that's, you know, just sort of some of my background.
Thank you to Louise for that wonderful talk. We hope you found it insightful and it shows you the range of options you potentially have with a biomedical sciences degree. We now hand over to Simon Hawkins to tell us a little bit more about himself, his studies, and going on to medical school after his degree.
So my name is Simon Hawkins. I'm a doctor that works in London at the moment, and I work in anaesthetics and intensive care. And so my background is that I came to Newcastle in 2007, and I applied and studied biomedical sciences. I always knew, sort of through school, I was quite lucky like Louise, where I knew what I wanted to do from quite an early age. But when I applied from my A-levels, I was unsuccessful in getting an interview or an offer for medical school. And whilst I got good grades at A-level, I got like 2 A's and 2 B's. And so at the time you could possibly get into medical school with 2 A's and a B, whereas now it seems to have changed a lot. The grades that I got wouldn't have made it easy or given me many options for medical school. And so I thought about what I wanted to do, and the option of biomedical sciences came up for me as a potential route into medicine that would help build up my qualifications and experience and let me come in a different route. And so I came here and did the open sort of biomedical sciences. I didn't do like physiology or pharmacology. I had no particular focus or interest within biomedical sciences. Like, there wasn't a particular area I was like, I really want to get more exposure, which I think is one of the really lovely things about biomedical sciences at Newcastle and at other universities, where if you have something that you find you really enjoy, you can expand upon that and focus your degree down and come out with, say, a pharmacology degree at the end of it. And there aren't many degrees that allow you to have that degree of freedom. And so it's a really good thing that Newcastle offers. And so in that, whilst I was at Newcastle, I applied for medical school in my 3rd year to enter as a graduate. And I got a place at Hull York Medical School. And so within that, I just continued to do my work experience through the main sort of form that I did was working as a care assistant. So I worked in people's homes with their main issues were dementia, and they had a number of health problems that kind of stemmed from that. And so I'd provide sort of personal care, medications, taking them out and things. And so that was my long-term experience that had the added bonus of me earning some money as well whilst I was at uni. And so that was kind of like the main thing that I used in my application to kind of step from biomed to medicine. And then I spent 5 years in Yorkshire, where I trained through medical school, and you do a variety of different modules, and it transitions you from like a lecture-based system where you are taught the foundations of medicine, and it kind of gradually evolves into you being placed into the hospital, learning how to apply those theoretical skills to patients in a clinical environment. And the idea, hopefully, is that by the time you qualify, that you can operate in a safe manner to provide basic care to patients on a ward. And so I came back to Newcastle because I loved my time there so much that I wanted to do my foundation training. And so that is the first 2 years after qualifying. You spend in a place of your choice. You do a variety of rotations that aim to give you core skills that every doctor should have before they go into their specialty. And so I did 2 years in sort of surgery and medicine, followed by an extra year where I went to work in emergency medicine for a year. And then after the 3 years in Newcastle, I decided I wanted to be in anaesthetics and critical care. And so that led me to coming to London 2 years ago. And so my role is kind of split in two different areas, really. So anaesthetics involves me mainly in treating patients for elective operations and bringing them for their operation, making them go to sleep and providing them with temporary forms of life support to allow the operation to safely happen, and then waking them up at the end. And so that is some of my job. And it's basically dealing with a lot of very well people who've got a potential issue that needs addressing surgically. And then the main part of my job is to do with emergency anaesthesia and critical care. So I will look after or be responsible for dealing with people who come in cardiac arrest, or have become in so critically unwell that sending them to a ward is unsafe. And so most of my role involves setting up and placing patients on life support, and providing medical treatments in addition to that life support to be able to help return them to a situation where they can be on a ward or home. And I guess probably the biggest thing that I've been involved with and still am working with is the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I was the whole of anaesthesia basically stopped. There's been no elective work for months. It's now just started. And so within that, because of the pandemic and the sheer wave of patients requiring critical care support, the focus of the hospitals was on maximising critical care capacity. And so I spent the last 4 months in ITU in London, and dealing with a 4-bedded intensive care unit that's how it normally is. We normally have a capacity for 30 to 40 patients. That capacity was over doubled, and at the worst we had 80 ventilated people. And these people are incredibly difficult to look after. They present challenges that no other group of intensive care patients will have. They're very, very difficult to get to be put into a coma. Patients with COVID are very difficult to ventilate, and they often require long-term sedation and ventilation. And so we've got patients in our unit now that have been there since the beginning of March who we cannot discharge because they are so deconditioned and so critically unwell that that removing them from that environment would be unsafe. And so my role now is mainly dealing with, like I said, setting up people on ventilators, dialysis machines, different infusions, and providing them with that critical level of life support at a time where their body is unable to do it for themselves. And so that part of my role I find more interesting than the elective anaesthetic side. And so that's where I spend most of my time, is in critical care. Thank you.
Thank you to Simon for that excellent insight. And we hope for those of you that are thinking about studying graduate entry medicine after your degree found that insightful and helpful. We now move on to Siobhan, who is currently working as a medical writer with SIRIUS and awaiting the start of her consultancy graduate management scheme after completing her PhD studies.
So I'm Siobhan. I'll tell you a bit about my background. So I did Biomedical Sciences as well at Newcastle University. I started that course in 2012 now. And before that, I actually wanted to get into medicine. And from doing my A-levels, did the pre A-levels, got A's in those. So I had the right grades, but didn't get any offers, unfortunately. So I then decided to take a gap year and I worked in a nursing home for a year. And after working there for a year, I kind of decided actually healthcare wasn't quite what I wanted to do, but I still really enjoyed the theory behind it. So that's why I decided to do biomedical sciences. And I got an offer at Newcastle, so came to Newcastle then. And I just kept on the broad subject as well. I wasn't really sure what speciality I would wanted to go into, so I thought keeping it broad would be better. But in your first year, you cover pretty much all of the different specialities within the biomedical sciences courses anyway, so that was quite nice to get that broad view. So I did that. From my second year of being on the biomedical sciences course, I actually found out about a job you could do throughout university. So I became a student ambassador. And basically they just email jobs out that you can do. It can be things from helping out on the visit days to helping running workshops. There's lots of different things that you can do. I even did one where it was involved in being in the photo shoot for the prospectus. So it's very varied, but it was good because you can work it around your course, and you also get paid for it as well, which is quite nice to get that extra little income throughout university. And also important to mention as well, something else I did in between my first and second year of university was I volunteered with one of the student organisations. It's called SKIP, Students for Kids International Projects. So Newcastle's got a branch, but also other universities have got them as well. And although I had taken a gap year, I hadn't gone travelling, which is one of the things I would have liked to have done. And as well as volunteering, this gave me the option to go and travel after as well. So that was a really nice thing to do. And essentially what I did was I went to Cambodia, lived in a rural area in Cambodia and taught the children there about English and healthcare. So it was very rewarding at the same time. And then for the weekend, we got to go travelling, and I went travelling for a week after as well. So that was a really nice thing to do. And I'd recommend it to anybody. So yeah, that was in between my first and second year. And then, as I said, I worked as a student ambassador throughout my second and third year of university. And between my second and third year in the summer, I undertook a summer research placement because I then started to think that, okay, I didn't want to go into medicine, but I do really like the theory behind this. So I thought potentially I wanted to go on to do a PhD, and PhD is competitive, so I knew I needed something else to help me get there. So I undertook the summer research placement in an area which I found interesting in the lectures, and that was for 8 weeks. I was in a research lab learning lots of new skills, stuff which I hadn't learned on the course, because although you do have laboratory practicals, it's very artificial. There wasn't actually a research question or answer, it's more just learning about the techniques, which is good, but it's nice to have it in that applied setting as well. So I did that, and then I had to do a write-up after, because I'd got funding from the university, but also from a different funding body. So I did a little write-up for that, and then there was also a poster presentation. So basically I designed a poster of all the findings that I'd done and the methods that I'd used throughout my research, and then presented that at a presentation at Newcastle University. And there were other people from not just biomedical sciences there as well, because the research placements are offered in all different specialities over the university. And I actually got first place for the post presentation, so that was really nice, and gave me something else to put on my CV as well. So I think that kind of helped me then when I came to apply to do a PhD in my third year. So I applied for that at the same time I was doing my third year dissertation project, and that was in something completely different to what I'd done for my summer placement, but still in an area that interested me. But I think that was really good to then try new techniques. But I do feel that the fact I'd already been in a research lab was beneficial. So I think even if you're not wanting to do a PhD after, I think doing a research placement is really beneficial, just because it gives you that head start, I think, for when you first go into a research lab. So I'd recommend it either way. So I found out about my PhD when I was doing my third year project. I was in the common room at lunchtime speaking to someone who was doing their project, and they said that their supervisor was looking for someone to come and do a PhD with them the next year. So I said I'd go and speak to him. He told me about it. It sounded really interesting, even though it was, again, different to everything that I'd done before. It sounded really interesting, so I decided to apply for it, and luckily I got it. And the PhD programme that I did was a competitive, it was competitively funded. So essentially that means that just because you're offered the PhD, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually going to get the funding for it straight away. because it was part of what's called a DTP, a doctoral training programme. They have so many places, and ours was with Newcastle, Durham and Liverpool. So basically all these people are going to join at the same time doing these PhDs, and they only have funding for so many each year. So I think there was 30 people that were told they could go and find students, and then out of that, in my year, only 18 got funded. I think the next year it was something like 25 or 30 got funded or something, but they sort of changed the format the year that I joined. So I think they were sort of just trialing. That's why they hadn't had quite as many. But no, that it worked out well. But a lot of PhDs you would find actually already have the funding available. So yeah, I wasn't quite aware of what competitive funding was at the time, but that's essentially what it is. But then I think all the things that I'd done, I had on my CV, so that I'd done the student ambassador, I'd done the summer placement, won the prize, all those things sort of helped, I think, to help me get the PhD and also get the funding for it. So I started my PhD in 2015 now, and it was a 4-year PhD. So previous years, it would have been 3 years PhD, 1 year MRes, so Masters of Research, and then 3 years PhD, but sorry, my screen just gone funny. There we go, we're back. But then for my year, they decided to not do the MRes and just go for a straight 4-year PhD. Although I am seeing more of a trend now that people are funding their own masters and then going on to do a 4-year PhD. So I suppose I was kind of unique in that crossover time. So yeah, you might potentially do a masters and then do a 4-year PhD, more likely now. And in my first year, because it was a doctoral training programme, as well as learning about the new techniques I was doing in the lab, there was also workshops that I attended with other people from my cohort. So our induction event was in Newcastle. They paid for us to stay in a hotel, even though I was in Newcastle. So I got to go there, have a nice meal, meet everyone else in the cohort, and then we had some induction events. And then other ones throughout the year we had in Leeds, I think. They've also sometimes been in Liverpool and in Durham. We had one about being an enterprising researcher, which was very interesting, sort of a bit like Dragon's Den style. So that was quite good. And then also one thing that you need to do as part of the DTP is you need to undertake a 3-month internship outside of the lab. But you can't do that in your last year because they expect that you're very busy getting results and writing up. So we had a workshop about approaching people to apply for positions. There were some people from different companies there as well, telling you what you could do with them. So that was really good as well. And then after that, each year, there is a conference where you can go and present your work and also listen to research being done by other people in your cohort. And actually in the first year, I did help out with organising that, although because it was arranged in Durham, we were in Newcastle, I was more just given the role of helping to get the word out in Newcastle that this conference was going ahead and getting the numbers and dietary requirements for that. But it was a good experience all the same. So that was my first year. And then for my internship, I did that, I think it was in my 3rd year, just after Christmas, which was a really good time to do it because I've been in the lab for a long time then, so I sort of needed a bit of a break. So I went to this International Centre for Life, which is in Newcastle. It's a science museum. And I worked within a core team of 3, including myself, to organise an event called Maker Fair, which is basically a family-friendly 2-day event which incorporated crafting, science, technology, robotics, all sorts of different things. And I helped with basically getting the information from the people that were coming to exhibit what they were doing, whether that be their robots, 3D printers, any scientific things that they were doing. So I liaised with those people. I liaised lots of people at the Centre for Life as well, because I was involved with actually making the floor plan to make sure we had room for everybody. So there was lots of other things that I was doing there, but essentially it was all event management. But it was really good. It was really nice to learn different skills and just do something a bit different to my PhD essentially. But also for 1 day a week, I went to the education department and helped them out with their workshops. So they would get schools from usually around the area, but sometimes they would come a bit further afield because they knew how good the programmes were at the Centre for Life. And I would help run the workshops with them. So that went from really young children in like reception class up to A-level students. So that was a really good experience as well. So then I came back to do my PhD, and also alongside that I'd been organising another conference, which is the North East Postgraduate Conference, which happens to be one of the induction events when you join the DTP that I was on for my PhD, and I was the co-chair of that. So that was involved organising the venue, organising speakers, sending out abstracts, asking people for abstracts so they could come and talk, getting poster boards, all sorts of different things, catering. So that was a really good experience as well. And I think one of the main things that you get from that is actually learning to delegate. When you're doing a PhD, it's very solitary, you're doing it all yourself. But then with this, you're working with a team of people and actually asking them, you need to do this, can you do that? What are your skills in? So that was a really good experience and a really good extra skill to learn. So then coming towards the end of my PhD, I decided that I didn't want to stay in academia. It wasn't quite what I wanted. So I started looking for different jobs that I could do using transferable skills that I'd learned throughout all the experiences that I had. So from the conference, from the Centre for Life, from my PhD. And I came across consulting at Accenture, which is is based in Newcastle. So I applied for their consultancy programme, and the main thing that I thought made me suitable for it was that they were looking for critical thinkers and problem solvers. And essentially, when you take away all the nitty-gritty facts from a PhD, those are the key skills that you were left with. So I thought this is a good thing to use in the skills that I've gained. So I applied for that. It was quite a long-winded process. You apply for it, then you wait a little bit, and then there's an online assessment, and then they invite you for an assessment centre, and then finally they actually offered me the job, which I was really happy about. But then coronavirus hit, and my start date got delayed from May to September, and then actually yesterday I got a phone call saying it was being delayed till January, unfortunately. But I have managed to find a job at the moment, so I'm working as a medical writer at SIRIUS Market Access, working remotely at the moment. So I was just asking my contract to be extended there, and hopefully that will be. So I should be fine. But yeah, everything's worked out, so it's working out okay.
We now move on from the presentations and into our Q&A, where our guests will be answering some questions that have been posed by some of the students that were able to attend live, and from those who submitted questions prior to the event.
For Simon, I was considering going through sort of the same kind of route to get to medicine myself, and I was just wondering about sort of your experience with it, and if you think it's as competitive as undergraduate in the way of sort of trying to get offers from medical schools and things like that.
So it's different, and it has changed a lot since when I applied. So I applied for undergraduate programs as a graduate. So I only applied for the 5-year programs. So I was competing against people who were in their final year of sixth form and other graduates as well. And the reason why I did that is that the competition ratios are better than the graduate entry programs. So, I mean, I knew at Newcastle, for example, that offered both. At that time, I think the ratios were something ridiculous, like 900 to 25 places, whereas the 5-year program offered, it was still competitive, but the ratio was much better between the number of applicants to places. The reason why that was more of an option is at that point, the tuition fees were £3,000 a year. And so because I was working so much as a carer, I could afford, my family could never have afforded to have helped me with fees. You know, that was just not something that was feasible for us. And so with the job that I had enough time, and I could earn money to be able to pay those fees myself. Whereas if I was, say, in your position now, the fees are much more. There's no way, personally, I could have earned £9,000 on top of doing the degree. So I probably would have considered a graduate entry program more seriously at that point, because the level of support that you get when you get a place is better. I know a lot of places have opened up more scholarships and bursaries to help students from backgrounds that aren't, say, that from backgrounds that their parents are doctors, or that take into account your financial background and help people, to encourage people from different backgrounds into medical school. And so it depends on your circumstances, and there's a whole, for some people that £9,000 fee isn't a particular worry, but for a lot of people it is. And I guess it depends on your own personal circumstances. I think if I was having to apply now, then I would have had no option but to go for the graduate program, because I wouldn't have been able to afford to go otherwise. I think a lot of it now goes on what else you've done in. So like if everybody's coming from a degree background and you've all got at least a 2-1, you've all got a UK CAT or entrance exam score of whatever, there needs to be something that differentiates you from the other candidates. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Like I interview for UCL here, and some of the best people that come forward and interview, there was one young lady that her experience predominantly involved working in a shop in retail, and she was only 17, but she gave a much better insight into the skills that she uses and how that was transferable to medicine than the people that would almost constantly recite or regurgitate I followed a surgeon or I followed a doctor. And she stood out far better because of that experience than the people that followed a cardiothoracic surgeon around. So you'll be surprised at what things that you have done that will differentiate you, and you don't have to have written 5 papers and published them, or you don't have to have done something clever in terms of working abroad and stuff. And it's great if you have those experiences, but even if you work, say, on a Saturday in a cafe, those skills are so important and actually go a lot further in getting you into medical school than there's a lot of the other things. So using what you've got, really. So I mean, and use it to your advantage. If you can earn money at the same time, then I think that will help you in terms of surviving sort of university, but also putting money aside for later on as well. I don't know whether that answers your question or not, so I hope it does.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries.
And just to add to that a little bit, I actually am the careers consultant for biosciences. So I work with a lot of students like yourself currently who are going through biomedical sciences with the aim to do either the first year transfer to medicine or go into graduate entry medicine after. So you definitely won't be the only person in that situation. And we run workshops to help you think about those different types of work experiences that you can get. We help you with your interviews and your personal statements, so there's plenty of support to help you sort of transfer on onto sort of graduate entry medicine. And we have an excellent financial advisory team as well, who, a lot of people now apply to a mix, so they apply to both graduate entry medicine courses and undergraduate 5-year programs as well when they come to reapply after their studies. So we've got an excellent sort of finance team who can sit down with you, even right at the start of your degree, and go through finances if you want to start planning to sort of save potentially to help with the costs. And then, as Simon says, that there are quite a few bursaries and scholarships around to sort of help you with that. But it is the graduate programme now that comes with the funding. So there's plenty of support if you're thinking about that route. There's even the option potentially to do it after your first year if you get that place on the transfer programme. So there's lots there for you to help support with that transition. And just like sort of Siobhan's experience as well, a lot of people come in thinking that, and then they start to do some work or they start to get some experience, and then because you're doing biomedical sciences, you can go down a different path if you want to. So it's an excellent programme, it's an excellent degree, and hopefully we'll see you in September for it. Is there anything else that you wanted to ask any of the other speakers?
No, that's all, thank you.
Okay, well, we did have one question that was submitted, we had 3 questions from one student that was submitted who couldn't make it to the session today, and they were for Louise. So the first one was, why did you decide to do a PhD?
because for me, as I said, probably sort of said in my little intro, I actually wanted to go into medical research from a really young age, probably about 13. I had a family friend who was in it, and I was sort of always advised to get yourself a PhD. I did get to the end of my first degree in biochemistry and looked at a few different things. I think I mentioned brewing. I still actually my ideal job still, even though what I do now is IT, is brewing. I'd still go and work in a microbrewery. I did also look at going to work in a pharmaceutical company, but I was told by the guy that interviewed me, actually, I was being quite open. I said I was going to PhD interviews as well. He said, Louise, if you want to go into any sort of medical research, even eventually in a pharma company, go and get your PhD, go and get it now, get it done, get it under your belt. So yeah, that was why. But I just to pick up on what Siobhan said, problem solving, absolutely right. It is one of the ultimate problem solvings, I think, you know, just teach you that as well. Yeah.
So just to follow up on that, if you haven't covered it in your intro already, what made you decide to work in a different industry from sort of that which you studied in?
I think the reason IT was, I actually, Siobhan, I admire you. I applied to Accenture during my end of my PhD, and I couldn't get in there. Anderson Consulting in the day. So I was looking at consultancy, that type of thing, something to use my problem solving. But at the time, the IT industry was really taking off. You know, internet had only just come about. It was really booming, and I think a lot of people were, if they were making a transition, traditionally people went from biochemistry to accountancy, but a lot of people were going from biomedical sciences into IT. And I got involved when I was at university and helping in the IT department. I did a little job doing IT demos, helping with printing, that sort of thing. So I found it all very, very interesting, and look where it has taken us in 25 years. So for me, it was an interesting industry, and the other part of it, to be honest, was I was like, I don't want to work in biomedical science anymore. In hindsight, wonderful thing. I probably might have been better off going to work like biotech or something like that. But you know, it's been a great experience. Yeah.
I think it just highlights what we try and sort of tell students, that you come to university, you get so many different types of experiences, you'll find things that you're interested in, and in between sort of all of you really, you've studied something and then gone to a slightly different direction, using the skills that you get and the transferable sort of experience, and like you say, the problem solving. I'm sure, Simon, problem solving is a massive part of your role as well, with all your diagnosing. So picking up on those sort of essential skills that you get, and then how they can be used in different industries is a really important part. And Siobhan, you mentioned that sort of you found out about your PhD just when you were in the break room through chatting to people, and then throughout it, it's involved a lot of sort of talking to different people. How have you managed to sort of develop and create those connections, so you're finding out about different opportunities and experiences?
Yeah, so definitely just talking to your peers, really. That was just a random conversation at lunchtime. I wasn't expecting it to happen. But then also, I think from organising the conference, I met a lot of people which I wouldn't have met necessarily if I hadn't have done that. So, for instance, because I was the co-chair, the other co-chair, she was from what used to be called the Institute for Health and Society. Mm-hmm. So that was more like public health and things like that, rather than being in a laboratory doing research like I was. She was going around doing interviews with people, so a completely different type of research. There was no way I would have ever met her if we hadn't have done that, and I think it's been useful because there's probably stuff that I have learned without realising from her that I've followed forward. And even when after I finished my PhD and looking for something to do before I started at Accenture, some of the contacts that I'd made throughout from the conference and things like that, someone emailed me saying, oh, there's this opportunity available. It wasn't quite appropriate, but it was really nice to be considered. I think just widen your network as much as you can, really. And also not just even with other people, other students, but also with other staff at the university as well. So actually one thing that I did was I got a month's funding after I submitted my thesis to do some qualitative research on the impact of organising the conference, because I think it was more than 12 years, 15 years, something like that, since it started, and they wanted to find out if it's actually worked. So I did some qualitative research with that. So as well as getting new skills, it was something to do in the time as well. But I got that because the person who sort of gets the committee together for each year for the conference, because the committee changes each year, because I had spoken to him so much, I found out about this opportunity. So just speaking to as many people as possible, really, it can be really useful, I would say.
Perfect. And I know, Simon, you touched on there about getting different types of experience to prepare you for your medicine applications potentially. Like I said, we'll have a lot of the biomedical sciences students that are planning on going down that route. Is there anything else that you would sort of advise that they focus on while they're studying to help enhance their chances of that graduate entry, medicine or medical school after they graduate?
So I think the students that I speak to now, if you've kind of gone from applying for sort of leaving from school entry and you've been unsuccessful, it's trying to identify, was there a particular thing that you could improve upon the following time? And so I think from the interviewing side of it, you want to see, well, what have you done with that time? And so some of the experiences that I talked about involve like care work, so working in a part-time on a voluntary basis within the care setting, such as a home for elderly people, or I worked as well for some time in a brain injury unit for people who had long-term disabilities because of that. And then other experiences such as like being involved within the community at university. So I think Siobhan mentioned about being a student ambassador. We had something similar when I was there, that involved sort of a third year student sort of, or not fostering, but providing some basic guidance to first year students, being involved in the recruitment events that Newcastle holds. So for the biomedical sciences, they used to have these open days for people pre and post offers to get some experience of what it would be like to come to Newcastle. I think it's kind of showing that you've tried to immerse yourself and gain opportunities outside of your course. And some of the research opportunities as well. There used to be some of the students that when I was there, used to do a couple of hours a week in a lab, and that would provide them with basic lab skills, and also they would get paid, and all of these things potentially open up other doors or conversations for further experience. And I think it's definitely not about like what you've done, it's what you've learned from it, and how and certainly from the medical school admission side of things, it's why was that particular experience important to you, and how has that helped you move forward with your decision to go into medicine? And so it may be that the very idea of research is not something that's for you, but you may find that actually you really like being involved in student recruitment, say. And so I particularly enjoy widening participation and encouraging people from backgrounds that are different, and being able to maximize their diversity within medicine. And because the skills that people bring are from different backgrounds, all contribute to helping make healthcare and other industries better. And so I feel that so many people think that medicine is not an option for them because of their background. And it's just, and I think we need to do, I really enjoy helping others to get into medical school, showing them the opportunities that are available to them. So a lot of my work now, outside of intensive care, is helping students from different backgrounds into medicine. And so, like I said, and a lot of the ones that come through that have the best experience are the ones that have just talk about their Saturday job, and I can't rate that highly enough, really.
Yeah, I think with all the students that we see, and I'm sure Kate will also know this, they always say, I've got no related experience, and we go, well, you've been working in a shop for how long? That's still related, they always undervalue it. So it's definitely something to like you say, reflect on. That self-reflection so important. And it's a cycle. The more experience you get, the more people you can talk to, and that leads to more experience. So it's just making use of that time at university. So you're definitely saying things that we find in university as well, and a lot of the sort of opportunities that you've all mentioned. So we do have those summer research placements still in biomedical sciences. We have student ambassadors, but we also have a jobs on campus pool as well, and we've got lots of different events. So the recruitment fairs themselves might not look the same this coming year with us not being able to gather you all in one space, but we are going to have an employability week where we're going to get lots of employers on campus. So right from the start of your degree, it's always a really good opportunity to get involved in these things. I've got a final question that I'm going to ask each of you just to sort of wrap this all up, which we're going to sort of ask everyone who's doing these sessions today. So I'll start with you, Siobhan. So just considering your time at university and your own career now, what one bit of advice would you like to share with the partner students?
Oh, okay. So advice I would share about my experience at university. I think enjoy it, definitely. And pretty much the people that you meet there. I mean, everyone, there's not a time in your life when you start somewhere new where everybody is so open and welcome to making new friends. And I think just really having that time to make those friends and keep those connections. But yeah, just enjoy it and don't stress about it, because it's a really good time. You learn so much, not just like stuff on the course, but also how to look after yourself as well. I remember my first week when I first moved to Newcastle, I didn't know how to use the washing machine, and neither did everyone else in the laundrette. So yeah, just enjoy it. It's really good.
Perfect. Louise, same thing. Any one bit of advice you want to share?
It's similar to Siobhan. I mean, I was at undergrad 30 years ago, and some of my friends I met in my first week in Hall of Residence are still some of my best friends now. And I really much through COVID particularly, and I think because of the things you go through as a student can be like the first time you've ever been through them together. You do get that quite a close bond, so you do feel you can talk about lots of things with each other. So yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the subject is extremely important, obviously, especially now with money, which I didn't have to worry about so much. But I think what you get around it and seizing any like opportunity, like Siobhan's talking about, those sort of extracurricular things, if somebody offers you, that they'll always come in useful somewhere down the line. Definitely.
Simon, any little last bits to add? What's your one bit of advice?
So I think it's taking advantage of the opportunities that are there for you. I spent so much time worrying about not being in medical school when I first started that whilst I had an amazing time at Newcastle, I know it did impact on me taking advantage of certain situations because I was so preoccupied about getting into medicine that it probably closed me off to some of the opportunities that would have helped me get there. Ultimately, like, it's such a big part of your life, university, and like, I think I wish I'd spent less time worrying, because I've made so many lovely friends that we're still really close now. Like, one of them was my best man at my wedding, and like, we're all still very, very close. And so I think, like the two ladies have said, like, the friendships that you'll make at university are the ones that will last you sort of beyond it, really. And so I'm really grateful to the other people that I've met, and it's been lovely to see sort of them. We all did biomed, and we've all gone in like completely different directions, which is crazy, really. But yeah, friends are definitely the main thing from university for me.
Definitely, yeah. I think you come in, we've focused a lot in these past 2 weeks for the partner students, a lot on using the experience and developing your degree, but it's that university life as well. It's the city to be a part of, and the pubs to go to, and hopefully the reopen, and the people that you meet. That's really valuable. So hopefully this has helped them a little bit as well, see that and reinforcing the messages that we've got. Thank you for tuning in to this recording of the Partners 2020 Ask the Expert session. We hope you found the discussion and the presentations from our guests useful and insightful. Remember to stay up to date with further advice from alumni and industry professionals. Subscribe to our Newcastle University Career Service YouTube channel, and you can follow us on our social media channels at NCL Careers on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. We hope to see you in September. Good luck and take care.